Good day coders. In this video, we'll be creating this wonderful card, but using a concept called content projection in Angular, right? So how to simply understand this is you want to create a component in such a way that you can actually configure it to have specific slots where you want specific elements to be rendered on your actual component. So that's just content projection in just simple terms. So how do you go about doing it, right? So we've got this wonderful component over here. So what we want to do is we want a slot for our actual header, right? So we're gonna have like a slot for our header, content, slot for our footer. Then we can just add like an image slot. So we'll add an image slot, header, content, and our actual footer. Okay, so this is gonna be for our, so those are our basic slots that we're gonna need. Now I can actually just go ahead and remove all of this, right? Go to my actual component, paste this, right? Okay, currently we're not gonna be seeing like anything, right? But if we wanna have this element show in our actual card image slot, so what we can do is we can just say this is a card image, right? And that alone will basically then render this in that specific slot, right? So now if we then move forth and say, okay, now that I've done that, let's just do this. I'll just cut this portion, go back to this, right? And then basically in here I just want to have my header, so I'm just gonna have all my header, my content, and my footer display in this section over here. So now if I just then remove this, right, I can just basically say this is my actual card header, right? And that alone will just basically then render my product title. If I say this is my card content section, and that will basically show that, right? So the nice thing is if I basically switch this around, okay, wait, if I just basically now remove this, put it up here, right? So the order in which I actually render these basic elements, right, won't affect how it gets rendered in my actual component, because in my component I've actually configured over here that I want this slot to show here. So irregardless in my actual component, if I've got like the card content on top of this card header, right, it will still render in the same order that I have in my actual component. I don't know if that makes sense, right? So this will just be called my card footer. Okay, so that's basically how you do it to actually cover this content projection, right? But now we've got this specific issue that we have with this implementation, right? So say for instance, if I were to misspell this, right, and actually save this, right, so this basically would not render my actual element, right, which is that card content, right? And this is because currently with my current implementation I'm just basically using magic numbers. So how we can actually solve this is we can just basically here and say this is my cards directive, right, .ts, right? So if it's my cards directives.ts, so what I can do over there is I can create like a directive, right? And I need to just basically create a selector, and I'm just gonna basically say this is my header selector. So now if I save this, right, what I can basically now do is in my actual card component, instead of me using this card header, right, like that, what I can use now is my app, and then I just say card header, right? So if no, sorry, my bad. So if I basically now use this, right, and in my actual element over here, because I created a directive for my, Okay, this directive is called my card header, right? So now what I can basically do, wait, let me just create it properly. I don't want to call it that. I want to give it a name like app card header, right? So now let me just copy this guy here. And then now if I actually come to this selector and add this, right? So now what I basically need to do to fix it rendering, because now you won't actually see this, right? Because I've got this card header like that. So now I can just basically create this like this, right? And then I can just remove this and render this inside that app's card header. So now I'm currently getting an error because I haven't actually saved my actual directive over here. So you can see that I'm actually getting that rendered. So now I would probably want to fix this for my actual footer section and my image, right? Okay, so how do I go about doing that, right? So let me just first start by creating an app card image, right? Then for my footer, I'll just say this is app card, this is my footer, right? So now let me just do this, and then I'll just create those directives. So this is gonna be my image, this is gonna be for my footer. So this is gonna be my image, right? And this is gonna be for my footer. And basically this is what I'm gonna need, right? So in my actual so let me just put my header up here, because now you know that the order doesn't really matter, right? So this is that, and then now I can say app card image, can use the app card image. All right, so if I just do this now, copy this, paste it here, remove this, so I can just basically now remove that, right? And now just basically need to save those directives that I'm actually using. So now you can see that I've got my actual app card, right? Okay, let's say card content. I'll just basically still use that for that. And then in here I can just use my app card footer section, right? And in my actual footer I can use this, go ahead and add that footer directive. So this is going to be my card footer directive, so that I can actually use this. Okay, so now if I go ahead and actually save this, right? So let's go to my actual directives. I've got my apps card footer, right? App card footer. Okay, what did I do wrong? So I've got my app card footer. Let me see. So I've got my title rendering properly, right? App card footer is, it's actually showing as well. Okay, my bad, right? So now I've got everything like showing, right? So I've got my header actually showing over here, and then I also, okay, well, I've got my image showing, I've got my header showing over here, and my footer, right? But now with my actual content, I want to do, let me see. So I'll probably want to do something, right? So if I don't have like the content section, right, I would want to also hide this footer, right? If I want to implement something of that sort, like such logic, right? So what I would need to do is, instead of me going ahead and using the ng content for this, right? So what I'll need to do is, in here I'll need to use like a template, right? So this is gonna be like an ng, so this is gonna use like an ng template, right? And then this is gonna be my card content template, right? So this is what I'm gonna call it. Okay, and then in my template I'd basically want to render this, right? Okay, so I'm going to be rendering that in that specific template. And now if I go ahead in here, instead of me having this content like that, I'll use this container and a container, right? Okay, so after using like this container, I'll basically, what I would need to do is use a router outlet, right? Well, ng-templates. So what I would need to do is first reference my content. So this is going to be my content child, right? So this content child that I'm basically trying to reference is this. So if I go in here, I'll just basically say it's this, then it's just my card content, right? And this is gonna be my template reference, which is of type any. For now, just can do that, and that can be nullable, right? And then in here, I can just basically use my ng-template outlet and just basically pass it this, right? So once I have this, what I can basically now do is add my common module, right? Just to remove this error and go ahead and save this out, right? So I know that since it's nullable, I would need to then also go ahead and use an ng-if in there and then just basically have that. Okay, so now what is it actually complaining about? So let me just have ng-serve So I want to ng-serve this, and then let me remove this. Okay, yeah, so that's what the error was, right? Let me just remove this and go ahead and reload my ng-serve. Let's see where it's actually complaining now. Okay, awesome. Now you can actually see your actual like content, right? So I can actually see my actual content in here, but what I want to do is if I don't have let's see, let's go here. So if I don't have the section like this, if I just hide this like this, right, I also then want to also hide my footer section, right? So what I would need to do is I would basically need to have like an if statement in here that just basically say this: if I don't have this card content, then I don't basically wanna show my footer section. So if my content doesn't exist, then I don't basically want to also show my footer. So that's how you can actually like do like some sort of like a control from here. And then if I return my actual card content, then this will then basically now render my stuff, right? Okay, so now that is actually done. So how can we then implement this type of thing, right? But using my actual directives, right? Again, so how I can actually do that is in here, I can basically have a directive, right? So let me just close this up. So I'm gonna have like a selector, which is just gonna be basically called my app card content. So this is going to be the name of my actual selector, right? So this is going to be my app card content, right? And then in here, I'm basically then going to have this as card content directive. Okay, so I can put this in square brackets, right? Okay, I'm gonna have like my card content directive, right? So now that I've actually done that, what I would basically then want to do is in my actual, where's this in my actual dashboard, where's my dashboard now? I can't see. Okay, in pages, dashboard, right? So what I basically want to do is I want to change this, right, selector to use my app card content, right? So this is basically what it's actually then gonna use. And then now I see that things are starting not to work, right? But this is not the moment to actually like panic, right? Okay, so how can I actually fix this, right? So how I can actually fix this is now in my actual child, right? The content child component, I'm basically using my app card content, right? In here. So what I can use is my card content directive because that's what I'm basically trying to target, right? And then once I've done that, I'd also change this guy over here to be use this card content directive. Okay, right. So now we're starting to have like a bit of some errors, right? So now how we can actually now fix this is because it still wants a template reference. So what we can do in this card content directive, we can have like a constructor that gets our actual template. Let me close this off. Add this. Let's see. Okay, so we'll just have like a constructor that just has a public template, and then this is of type template reference, right? Okay, so now in my actual component, now I can actually now reference this. Okay, now that you've actually done everything, and you might be wondering, but why isn't it showing but you don't also have any errors? So you just need to also take into consideration something, right? With this implementation, right, you just basically need to import your card content, right, directive. And then now if you actually go ahead and save this out, right, it'll then basically show that. So now if I were to go to my dashboard and remove this section over here, well, let me just remove this, save this. So if I were to just comment this section over here, you'll see that I won't basically see that. And then if I were to comment this as well, I'll just basically see that image tag. So yeah, this is basically what you need to implement this wonderful UI over there, which is pretty cool, right? So and then I can do something, right? Let me just go ahead and add something interesting. So instead of just having a p tag like this, so I can just have an ng class in here, and then just say I want to have this p4 only if I have this, right? If I have the card content, right? So now if I basically go in here and I don't have my card content, so if I just basically remove this, save, it'll remove that guy. If I remove this as well, it'll basically also remove this and actually just show my image. So the nice thing now, if I return this, okay, well, if I just basically now uncomment out this, it'll show my card, and then basically if I do that, then it'll also show that. So yeah, this is basically how you actually implement content projection with Angular. So if you're new to the channel and you actually like this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.